if native heritage sites started burning to the ground across the country and we had verified accounts encouraging it and cheering it on? There would be a whole commission. The entire country would.
So if one of these schools, or sorry, one of these churches happens to be the site of a crime scene, so that they were either somewhere where residential school children were tortured and murdered, and then after the fact, since this closed down, someone decided to burn it down. That's a very big difference. And if that is the case, we don't even know if that is the case, but if that is the case, that is a very big difference from someone committing, quote, hate crimes specifically towards a religion, right? And if anyone here was the victim of a hate crime, again, it was Indigenous people. They still are. Ooh, that's loud. What's with the new motif? Is she a squid? Is that what's going down now?
Hey everyone, if you have been keeping up with my posts the last few days, then you will know churches in Canada are burning right now. Not because it is a damn hot summer there at the moment, but by deliberate arson. And I'm not just talking about one or two churches here. There are literally dozens being attacked. I can't even count how many have been targeted. Just last night in Alberta, 10 churches were the target of vandalism. Last week, 4 Catholic churches were burnt to the ground. This is getting insane.
Okay. Just before we get too deep into this one, I just want to say, for the record, we at this time do not know who is burning the churches down. Now, let us just say one thing, because Indigenous people are obviously getting blamed right away. It's like, well, it's just Indigenous people doing this as revenge for the residential school system, clearly. Some of these churches do have records, not all of them, but some of them do have records of the individuals who would be responsible for committing some of the most atrocious crimes against Indigenous people, especially Indigenous kids, during the residential school system. So, to imply that they are destroying what could be a very large amount of evidence is in itself a little bit sus, right? I'm just going to put that out there. Until we actually know who's burning the churches down, simply saying that it's Indigenous people, again, is just jumping to the end of something without knowing any of the facts.
But why is this happening? What was the thing that sparked this? Well, if you are not a Canadian, you probably do not know the history of the settlers and the Indigenous in the country. And it is, a sordid past, quite similar to the history of America and Australia. And one particular thing in Canada that goes highly criticized is our residential school programs, where essentially children were taken out of Indigenous communities and sent to schools that would teach them to act like the European settlers and basically beat the Indigenous culture out of them. In some cases, quite literally, where kids were both physically and sexually abused.
I'm just going to straight out say, color me surprised. Did not think that she was going to give quite a fair interpretation. So, hey, in the interest of good faith, that was certainly, that could have gone worse. That could have gone much worse.
Many people refer to what happened as, at the very least, being a cultural genocide, and I would not disagree.
Well, hey, come on. She's actually ahead of the time from quite a few popular Twitch streamers, shall we say. Interesting.
Migrants coming to a new land and forcibly making a native people forget about their own history, customs, and language and forcing them to change to theirs is absolutely destroying their culture deliberately. This is something all Canadians are educated on in school, and for the most part,
Whoa. All right. We're already derailing. I guess that was 2 minutes. 2 minutes of great content. But no, it's a monstrous problem. It's not exactly a huge part of our curriculum.
We all agree was wrong. Now, recently...
No, that's another thing. That's, a recent poll showed that 2/3 of Canadians didn't even know this was an issue up until the discovery of, again, all the Indigenous children that were buried in these unmarked mass graves. So, yeah, not something that everyone agrees is wrong. More like something that everyone is coming to terms with, That's how I would put this.
What has resparked this conversation of historical abuse is the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves using ground radars at
Thousands at this point.
former residential and boarding schools in Canada in multiple provinces. And while the country seems completely shocked by this discovery, the truth is, for those who lived in these Indigenous communities and those who know the history, this actually was known well before the mass media attention. As noted in the National Post, from the earliest days of the Indian residential school system, the federal government openly acknowledged high rates of student mortality. An official 1907 report into Manitoba Indian residential schools even included charts cataloging pupils as either good, sick, or dead. There was never an official policy on how to handle the dead from Indian residential schools, but because the Department of Indian Affairs refused to ship home the bodies of children for cost reasons, it follows that most were buried on or near school grounds. This was confirmed by the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released in 2015. Many, if not most, of the several thousand children who died in residential schools are likely to be buried in unmarked and untended graves, it wrote. This is obviously horrific. I have not seen anyone disagree with that, and it's been a reopening of wounds for the nation to discuss and heal from. The National Post article actually offers some legitimate solutions and ways to make things better, like finding strategies to...
The National Post is a right-wing newspaper in Canada. You could say it's center-right. I wouldn't put it full right. I would say center-right, but it's not a surprise to me that she's going to be using this as a primary source. But still, I'm going to be, honestly, as of now, 3 minutes and 31 seconds into this video, surprised. Still, like, I am a little bit astounded that she has done a shockingly amount of fairness to this issue.
Commemorate, protect, and document these grave sites. However...
Here comes the but. There shouldn't be a however. Anyways, here we go.
Unfortunately, some people have very little interest in healing and actually improving the lives of all Canadians and properly documenting history, and simply want revenge, whether that revenge even makes sense or not. Which brings me to, what does any of this have to do with churches? Well, many of these residential schools were in fact run by churches, whether that be Catholic, Anglican, or otherwise, and overseen by the government as well, leading people to now blame all churches across Canada, despite the fact that the people who did this aren't even alive anymore, for these graves.
Okay, first off, no, many of them are still alive, and none of them have faced justice for this, again, which is a huge part. There has been no reconciliation. Secondly, what are you basing this on? How are you making this jump to suddenly say that these individuals are burning down the churches in revenge? I mean, I understand why, that just makes logical sense, but we need some evidence.
Which is possibly the dumbest reaction to this incident imaginably possible. Firstly, many of these churches being burnt down are on Indigenous land, meaning the members of the church, the people employed there, the people who run charity work there and are receiving it, the people who go to worship there, are likely Indigenous themselves and may even be the descendants of residential school victims. I cannot imagine how burning down their place of worship is going to bring them truth and reconciliation.
Again, what evidence do you have to suggest that? What part of this makes you think that they're the ones burning them down? You need a huge amount. Like, you can't just make that leap and say, okay, well, yeah, this is clearly Indigenous people burning every single one of these.
And speaking of truth, if for some reason any of these churches were connected to the residential schools and may have had documents or graves or anything, which people have no idea, they're just arbitrarily attacking Christian churches. But
kind of like you have no idea what you're talking about. You're just arbitrarily attacking Indigenous people, claiming they're the ones doing this. Yeah.
Let's say there were a church that did, and they went and burnt that down. They would be destroying evidence. They would be destroying history. They would be destroying people's abilities to properly document and account the stories of those who may have been impacted by the residential school program.
Yeah, so maybe it's a bit of a leap to suddenly suggest that they're the ones who are doing this.
It's just stupid. But most importantly, out of all the reasons that could be listed, this is a crime. A crime against people who have done nothing wrong, and more so, a hate crime. You are destroying the place of worship of a religious group that is now gaining mass hatred in the country from the public for crimes they did not commit. No one.
What the ever living fuck? Like, what do you have to say about the indigenous people who had to go through this and are still going through it right now?
One is responsible for the crimes of a dead man, or even crimes of their relatives historically before them. No one would take it as an acceptable excuse to burn down a mosque in Canada because of a Muslim terror attack.
Okay, if you want to talk about hate crimes, what do you characterize what had been happening for fucking centuries to indigenous people in this country? And now the old churches, many of them which are abandoned and have been abandoned for a long time, that's what you characterize as a hate crime?
That would be a hate crime. And you would be arrested for it, rightly so, and it would be international news and the topic of political discussion for weeks in Canada. These church burnings, however, have been going on for weeks now, and I have only just started seeing them in the news somehow. And
they've been all over the news in this country. What the fuck are you talking about? They have been since the first one lit on fire.
Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has only commented on them for the first time yesterday. And what about progressive activists? What are they up to in all of this? Are they in an uproar about the destruction of worship sites in a country with freedom of religion? Are they upset about this vandalism and arson?
Most of them are probably waiting, like myself, to find out what exactly is going on before commenting on them.
Oh, should we do a check mark check? Oh, there we go. If I wake up tomorrow and the news is reporting that every Catholic church in Canada was mysteriously burned to the ground, I wouldn't be upset. Hashtag residential schools. Yep, that's about right. Normal blue check behavior there. Seriously. Imagine if people behaved this way reacting to any other community in Canada. If mosques...
Yeah, so she had to turn this entire thing into outrage culture, of course, involving Catholic schools. That was the twist. It's not even an exciting twist at the end of the day. It's like, I'm going to acknowledge that this was a horrible atrocity. I'm going to talk about it in the past tense because it happened so long ago and we're only now finding out about it, even though the last school closed in 1996. But yeah, apparently no one is still alive who had any involvement in any of this. Yeah, that's how quick lives pass in Canada.
Started burning to the ground across the country, or say if Native heritage sites started burning to the ground across the country and we had verified accounts encouraging it and cheering it on, there would be a whole commission. The entire country would...
So if one of these schools, or sorry, one of these churches happens to be the site of a crime scene, so that they were either somewhere where residential school children were tortured and murdered, and then after the fact, since this closed down, someone decided to burn it down. That's a very big difference. And if that is the case, we don't even know if that is the case, but if that is the case, that is a very big difference from someone committing, quote, hate crimes specifically towards a religion, right? And if anyone here was the victim of a hate crime, again, it was indigenous people. They still are.
Go into an uproar about extremism. And yes, you know what? Canada does have a problem with extremism. We're seeing it right now. And maybe we do need to deal with it. I'm just not sure politicians are ready to acknowledge the kind of extremism it is, because it's looking like it doesn't quite fit into their neat little narrative.
So what she's trying to reference right now is the fact that Canada recently put the 3%ers and the Proud Boys under the terrorist designation in this country, and good. It turned out that as soon as they did that, the Proud Boys in Canada just completely dissolved. So amazing. Great news. Now, if I'm not being too colorful, if I'm not using my crayons too much here to paint inside the lines, I'm assuming she's trying to point it towards indigenous terrorism. You know, all these radical indigenous terrorists who are now burning down churches, committing hate crimes against the good Catholics of this country.
And that's the terrifying thing, is how long is this going to go on for before we recognize this as extremism? Are we going to have to wait until someone is in one of those churches that gets burnt down? Will we have to wait until this escalates into something worse? Now, it is perfectly reasonable to be infuriated with terrorism. It is perfectly reasonable to be infuriated with residential
Jerk me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
schools, but harming and blaming people who had nothing to do with it is not reasonable.
So again, she's making this accusation that the people burning down the churches happen to possibly be indigenous, or they were victims of the residential school system. In that case, is every single Catholic church that has been burnt down, are they completely disassociated from the residential school system? Because that's another claim that she's making. There's just like claims upon claims upon claims.
Criminal. And this is like, I feel like I'm talking to a kindergarten class, but for some reason, there are people in Canada doing backflips, mental backflips, to try to excuse this. I had one person suggest to me that by lamenting the loss of these churches, I don't have empathy for those found in the graves at residential schools. Like, could you imagine someone burning your house down, and when you get upset about it, being told you don't have empathy for the deaths of someone who died at another house at the...
Were you abusing and sexually molesting kids in that house? And then did the kids who were abused and sexually molested burn that house down after the fact? Is that the case? Is that what happened?
Hands of another person long before you were born. This is absurd. Just insane. And don't fall for it. Do not let these people gaslight you into thinking this is okay or justified in any sort of way. Means. If you are a churchgoer in Canada, please contact your local representatives. Get security teams and night crews out around your churches.
So this is the first video she's made on this topic, and obviously, like, it makes complete sense to me that this is how Lauren Southern was going to spin it, right? Like, this is a horrifying issue of an ongoing genocide in this country towards Indigenous people, and the bad guys here are Indigenous people because they might be burning down churches, of which I have no proof. Okay, I'm just saying that, come on, this is really, really serious. These churches are getting burnt to the ground. We don't know who's doing it, but it could be terrorists, and this could be a massive hate crime.
Install cameras if you have to, so we can catch these people. Begin rebuilding if you've lost your place for community and worship. You have a right to your faith. You have a right to worship. That is in the Canadian law. You have a right to not have your building burnt down in your community. And even if you aren't a Christian, even if
you also have a right not to be culturally genocided. That's the thing.
You aren't religious at all, or you're from a different faith, I would like to think that you still care about this too. I mean, this is a rights issue in Canada. This is a matter of extremism that could very well end up affecting groups other than Christians too. But I don't want to end it like that. I mean,
it's only a matter of time before they come for you, or you, or you. So look out.
It's just Canada Day. There's still so much beauty out there, and we need the truth. We also need less black pills. So I hope you all know, those of you in Canada, I am praying for you. And I know many, many watching this and many more will stand up to help save churches there and churches around the world. And I think the reason a lot of us are so angry, I'm so upset, people are getting so fired up about this and everything going on in the world right now is because there is so much joy and goodness and hope, and it's worth protecting. People love their communities, people love their churches, people love their families, and they don't want to see them go down these dark paths. They don't want to see...
How did you twist, like, the genocide of an entire people into an issue about you and the Catholics? And oh my God, how do you keep doing this? And making money off it? Oh, she's changed. Oh, she's changed. She's so much better now. No longer W for white supremacist. No, she's improved. Oh God. Hey, do you like movies? Do you like Serfs? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs Cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like, just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because It's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and VK Jehannam, we are prepared to commit human sacrifices for your eternal glory. To our monarchs, the Tim Caucus and Tom Spiker, we are humbled to be your oafish jesters, clowning around in your royal court. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Tofox, Ryan Lubin, Trevor R., Jeff Lamb, and Alexander Thaler, we shall proudly carry your standard onto the battlefield and die for your precious land. To our esteemed Knights of the Round Table, Dark Puppy, Jenna Towell, Anna Loves Riley, Quiet 185, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, The Great Pudini, Bone Genie, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramona Costa, J. Fraser Cartwright, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Yopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glass, we raise our swords, and we salute you.